to allow Jake to be
Yeah.
the father that he wanted to be, or that he was trying to be, or he was on track to be. Um, the theme of forgiveness obviously permeates throughout this entire movie. I mean, from the onset, you're talking about Jake. He's troubled by not just the act of hitting his wife, like you see them all come together at the table, et cetera, but the
Hmm.
conviction. I think him writing to his children is a form of that. I honestly believe that
Hmm.
he has written something along the lines of, I'm sorry, I didn't mean for this to
Hmm.
happen. This shouldn't have happened to us. How can we make it right? I'm still your father. I still love you. I still care for you. We still need each other. We'll be
Yeah.
together in the short term. And I think it's the reason why Mary is still enamored with him. She doesn't even
Yeah.
know who he is. He's just a picture at this point. But I think the fact that she holds on to that, and I think it's very significant that it's her and not Ray Allen's character that is the one that's still in love with her father. My
Yeah.
mother herself told me that the first love of a woman's life is her father. So
Mm.
therefore, I think it's um, very non coincidental. It's intentional, purposeful, and it's masterful in that it does that.
Yeah. So we talked about this a little bit in the pre-production movie. It's interesting because like I think naming Ray Allen's character Jesus just plays out in so many interesting ways throughout this
Mm,
movie, and the notion of forgiveness is one of those things
mm,
because I thought I don't know what's in those letters that Jake wrote,
mhm,
but I think watching this movie, I never really felt like Jake was demonstrating the amount of contrition for his actions. And it's also interesting about the dynamics of their family. Like I've watched this movie a couple times, right,
mhm,
throughout life and everything. And this is probably, as I'm watching it now, this is the oldest I've been as an adult person watching this movie.
mm,
And when I watch it now, what I see is I wonder if Jake is somewhat abusive, maybe not to an extreme example,
mm,
but if he's somewhat abusive to the other family members in a way that has them on edge about him. Like that scene when he comes home after Jesus throws the basketball away, like the tension in there is like everybody knows he might go off,
mm,
right? And like that way that he carries the character, and I think this is a credit to how Denzel plays the role. Denzel does a great job of, I think, having right below the surface of Jake Shuttlesworth something that can be a little mean spirited.
mm,
And so it's like, and you get that. So it's like, when you're watching that scene, he's playing basketball with Jesus, he's knocking Jesus over. His friend is like, yo, why are you being so hard on him? He's checking his friend, like, don't tell me how to raise my son. He's drinking, all of that. He goes home, the violent thing happens. He ends up accidentally killing his wife. But it's like, it almost seems like that behavior is there. And then it comes out a little bit more when Jake Shuttlesworth is drinking, because later on in the movie, you see that same thing. He
mm,
gets drunk. He's kind of like intimidating to the nephew, right? He kind of scares the nephew. You see he kind of loses it with Lala's boyfriend in the parking lot, like right in front of the school. Like he's got like this kind of real rough edge to him, and it's almost like Jesus has to forgive him for that. Not so much the the murder or the accidental murder of the mom, because I think at some level he gets like that was a mistake. But I think the other part is like the idea of, I'm also forgiving you for being the type of man that you are, and understanding that that was your limitation.
mm. That's a unique. See, like you. Um, I think the last time I've seen this as a more mature adult might have been like 2, 3 years ago.
Okay.
Seeing it now, um, I don't get that. I think it's
Okay.
also because I have it under the backdrop of I'm comparing and contrasting all of Denzel's roles as a parental figure slash father. So I've
Hmm.
seen how he's been like in uh, what's the joint where he's a baseball player, um, and he tells his son essentially, "It's not my job to like you." Yeah, and
Oh,
then
you're talking about
fences,
Fences.
yeah, fences, where he's like,
Yeah,
where
Fences.
he
Yeah.
literally
Hmm.
is very verbally demonstrative that I put food in your stomach, you sleep in my house,
Hmm.
you're under my roof, I put clothes on your back, etc., etc. I do this because I have an obligation to you. I have a job to you. Then in Training Day, he's just an absentee father, and he's an a hole
Hmm.
where he is
Yeah.
literally, the worst. And then there's other movies where he is a very gentle and parental figure. I mean, Malcolm X, obviously, blatantly, um,
Hmm.
to not only his own daughters, but to the nation of Black people. So in this movie, while under that backdrop, under that guise, as well as his own personal relationships that I've read about, um, I would say that he is more of like the stern father figure, the disciplinarian who is like, don't do this, and he has to be that way
Hmm.
in order to provide structure, stability, unanimity, all under the guise of I love you. That's why I do this. It hurts me more than it hurts you to discipline you.
Yeah, and that's a razor thin line, man. It's a razor thin line to, and it's almost like it's like a little bit of a foreshadow in the next week's show, but
Mhm,
it's a razor thin line between being respected and being feared.
mhm,
You know what I mean? In a family, you can it's so easy for the strongest person in the house to also create fear for the other people in the house. And it's like, like it's something I think, like as fathers, like we have to wrestle with that. Like if you're in a family where you beat your children, right? You have to think about, what does that mean if I do that?
mhm,
What does that mean if I put my hands on my child? Am I setting my child up for them to think this is okay,
mhm.
and for them to think this is okay if it's done by somebody else? And I know if you have a daughter, you really think about it, like what does that mean for that? Because you want to be the disciplinarian, you don't want to necessarily impose your strength in that way. And if you do, there's these consequences that you're thinking about down and down the line. And that's like the burden that I think a man or a father has in a family, knowing that he has the physical strength or the psychological strength or the emotional strength to hurt everyone. How do you balance that properly so that you're not hurtful, but you're on the line of being the disciplinarian, that you're on the line of setting the standard, that you're on the line of setting the protective factors around the family so that other more predatory things can't come in.
Well, I think Denzel in this movie is able to do that. And I think when you compare it to the coach, who's a surrogate father who says, "Hey, give me something," he's offering him the Lexus.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
Denzel's not Weasley like that.
Yep.
You see it with DeAndre, who is maneuvering in on Lala, and he's trying to figure out like, if I
Yeah.
tempt her,
He's a roach.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's like, if I tempt her with sex, that's my way in. And the
Hmm.
agent, who is the basically the puppet master of DeAndre, is like, all right, we're gonna get to him through the girlfriend. And then when I'm in the room with him, you distract her with all the fancy things that she can get potentially. And then in turn, I will, tell him about, look, I can get you this watch. I can get you this car. I got teams already lined up, but I can't give specifics, yada, yada, yada. You even got it with Uncle Bubba, where he's like, well, your Aunt Sally and I have always been there for you. And the very least that
Yep.
I could do, and I took this out, and, I did that and I did this. And, the least you could do is hook me up with Alexis. Now, the crazy thing throughout it is family doesn't use or manipulate love in order to coerce you to do things for you. If you're going to do it,
Hopefully. Hopefully.
well, that's the standard. But
Hopefully that doesn't happen.
if you love somebody, you will want to do these things for them because
Yeah.
it is an
Yeah.
act or a symbol of your love. So
Yeah.
it's very ironic that these people who supposedly name him as the thing that they cherish, adore, care for, and admire, yet they are his weakness, they are his downfall, they are exploitive, they are manipulative, they are deceitful, they
Hmm.
are distrustful. I could go on and on and on. But the
Yeah.
fact is they're the complete opposite of what a family member is.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why his name is Jesus, because he's around all these people that say that they love him, but they're actually trying to get over on him.
Mm,
I do just want to say this part. There's one last thing about the idea of like, is there some um, abuse or some domestic kind of stuff there with Jake's character? So there's two things. One is the way that Jesus also talks to Mary in this movie, like in that first scene when they're together,
mm,
the way that he's talking to her, even Jake is like, why are you talking to your sister like that?
mm,
Like, why are you talking to her? Like, he didn't even like the way that he was talking with her. And like that scene when she was talking about, well, I don't want to go, I might not have to go to school. Remember, he jumps on her,
Yeah.
starts shaking her and everything. He puts his hands on her. Well, where did that come from? You know what I'm saying? Where did that come from? Like why? Like Spike Lee he's a great movie maker.
Yes.
There's reasons why he's writing those scenes and he's having those things play out. Why is Uncle Bubba, who you mentioned to before, also, why is he so condescending of the aunt? Like, he talks like, he said, like, why don't you take your big butt and get out of here or something? Like, he's very condescending to her. So all these characters, there's something about them, the way that they're talking to these women and girls in their life is like disrespectful. It's a little violent. It's all these things, and Jesus is like, I have to get Mary out of Uncle Bubba's house. Why? Why do you feel like he needed to get her out of there? Which is when that's why he went to the coach and he said, "Yo, I got to get my sister out of here." And then the coach is like, "Well, yeah, that's why I put you in that apartment 2 weeks later and everything. That's why you've been living there." So there's something that I think is present, and it's not like clearly stated and obvious. So I'm reading into it, but I'm reading into it as like my eyes as a man this age watching this movie.
Well, see, I think it is blatant, it's purposeful, and it is obvious. I mean, look at Dakota, right? She has a pimp, and
Yeah, so you see how she's being abused,
so
right?
she's
Yeah,
abused by another male, and it's more about the themes you're talking about is about power. And shout out to Amari Hardwick, 50 Cent, season 3, episode 3. I know CJ don't get down with Tariq, but um,
I
the
don't.
fact is that all these gentlemen
You
are,
almost made
and I
me
use that
curse on this joint, man. You almost got me there.
gotcha. um, but yeah, no, all these gentlemen, and I use that term very loosely, all these individuals, all these males, they are trying to utilize their power over these females, their physical
Mm,
as well as their ability to be manipulative, very
mm,
strategically, mind you, because these individuals are vulnerable and they come to them in their time of need. So you
yep.
have this person, Dakota, who now she's finding a semblance of respect and love and modesty in Jake, but that's because
Yeah.
he was punished and he's in the same boat. And I think
Yeah.
that theme of forgiveness is demonstrative because Mary, I think she sees it like, all right, I know why Ray Allen's character is doing this.
Mhm.
Hurt people.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily
Yeah.
because, yeah, I learned it by watching you, as that old drug
The
commercial was.
commercial, yeah, the jug
I
commercial.
don't think
Mhm.
it's just that. That's too obvious, and Spike doesn't. He doesn't do that. I think he's more into the subtleties and the intricacies, and I think it's more about, hey, these are all individuals who are learning on the fly what it means to be a man, means to be a husband,
Yes.
means to be a father,
Yep.
even at this age of the game with Uncle Bubba. I think it's because they're
Yep.
surrounded by other, because this is coming out of the dawn of the crack age, where literally you had a mass amount of black men who were put in different jails and prisons, and they weren't there. And then when they're coming back into the world unprepared, unskilled, without any type of prospects of a decent career, forget job, career, these individuals are going to resort to drinking. They're going to resort to trying to G check another dude. Like, don't tell me how to raise my child, because that speaks to being emasculated. Having another man tell
Yeah.
you how to handle your responsibilities as the central figure, the pivotal figure in the family dynamic, you're not going to take that. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
I also think
Yeah.
the fact that Denzel's character, when he is pacing back and forth in any of the scenes and alcohol's in the backdrop, I think